Hi, my name is Martyn Weaver. I'm the marketing manager for Corgi, and today I'm going to talk to you about the new catalogue which is coming out this month.
Any new tooling or new features that you're introducing with the catalogue?
Yes, there's a lot in this new catalogue across all of our collectible ranges. Aviation Archive, we've got a Messerschmitt 109 in 1/72 scale. It's Hauliers Renown, our 1/50th scale trucks. We've got the Volvo F89, which is a classic Volvo from the 70s era. This will give us more options and opportunities on doing European haulers as well as heavy haulage from this era. In 1/43rd scale Vanguards, we've got the Ford Capri Mark 1. Fords have always been very popular with our collectors, and the Capri Mark 3, our existing one, is actually our best selling ever Vanguard, so we're sure this is going to be very popular with the collectors. Also at this scale, but not actually a Vanguard, we're introducing a new range called the Lotus range, and this range will be covering all forms of Lotus vehicles from the brand began, starting with the Lotus Evora, which is one of the newer modern concept cars. From this tooling we'll also be able to do the GT series to cover the motorsport options, but also we'll be doing the F1 Lotus as well. So it's the first time in many years that Corgi has produced Formula 1 and back to Lotus as a very popular model in the earlier ages. Also in this Vanguard's range, we're doing a set to commemorate Sir Winston Churchill with two of the vehicles that he once owned. One of them being the Land Rover, and to make this model we actually modify the seat in the Land Rover because he in his later years liked to be driven rather than drive, and he had a specialised seat made by Land Rover which was effectively like a double seat, which we've actually modelled. The biggest highlights in any new Corgi catalogue are always the new toolings, but also quite often sometimes the second and third liveries of toolings if they're very strong liveries. For example, in Aviation Archive, our heavy bombers in the Short Stirling and Avro Lancaster, strong liveries and other uses of the tooling which we've never produced before will now be popular. We're also doing a small range to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the coronation of the Queen. So a little bit like the Jubilee, it's continuing the theme of some models to mark another part in royalty event. In Hauliers Renown, we've done the moving floor and the Eddie Stobart biomass livery. Eddie Stobart's always been a very, very popular haulier for Hauliers Renown. One of the big things for this range is we've actually bringing out a range of plain white cabs and trailer units which are focused not just on necessarily the collecting side of things, but more so for the modeller. These can either be decorated into a livery or for building up forms of diorama. But again, it's one of these things that collectors have been asking us for a long time, so we've now gone ahead and produced it.
Are there any items that are very limited edition?
It varies between category from a numbers perspective, but ones that we're sure are going to be extremely popular are going to be like the heavy bombers. We've got the Mosquito, the Stirling and the Lancaster. They always sort of seem to be very, very popular and seem to sell through quite quickly and disappear off the shelves. And when we go to events and that, people are always asking us for them, and sadly they've sold out. So our Collector Club exclusives, because these are exclusive to the club and often the run numbers are very low, these always prove to be very, very popular and scarce models to get hold of.
Are there any that could become collectibles of the future?
I suppose really, I mean, if we look at any Corgi models from the 1950s through to the 70s, I suppose we'd argue that nearly all of them are collectible now. So one time in the future, everything will be collectible, but I think it varies from range to range on how long it takes before they become very highly collectible. Sometimes it can be at product release if the limited edition numbers are quite low, but more often that it's normally 2 to 3 years later. Quite often that people hear about, they buy a model and they hear about previous ones and they go looking for them, whether it be at toy fairs or more so on the internet now. That's when you really perhaps feel their overall collectability has actually gone up, but that definitely reflects in normally the amount of them are produced in the first place. So anything with a low number normally has a high collectible value.
Have you got any personal favourites?
Yeah, there are a few in this range and in previous range which are personal favourites. Examples more so in Vanguards where the car actually modelled is either perhaps of a family member or even a friend. And I suppose for me there's association there, but away from that, I think for me personally, it's models which have got a lot of history behind them. So it's not just essentially about the die-cast model, it's about the story about why we did it or why that model is so great, whether it's about a haulage company that was built up from one man in the 1960s and 70s, built up into a whole big entity now, or in aviation, for example, whether it's a pilot that ran a certain sortie, perhaps even sacrificed their life for the country, or even events that may have changed the path of the war, and it can actually be related back to that model. I think they're, for me, the ones that I'd sort of associate as favourites.
How does Corgi decide which models to make, and also how many you'll make?
Well, there are three key stages to that, really. Firstly is listening, really, and that's really getting out there and listening to what collectors actually want, and comments on things that you've already done in the past. You then get a bit of directions of potential new castings or potential new liveries on things which people actually want. Secondly is history. I mean, from areas you can see how things sold, or even looking at the second-hand market, things which obviously were very, very scarce. That obviously can give you a guide to there was a huge demand for that. As for the amount we actually produce, I mean, that really comes down to what's happened in the past, and taking a bit of a gamble on it in some ways. We do try to get as much feedback after a range has been announced to the popularity of it, so that we can make the right number of models, because in die-cast collecting, making the right number of models is important. If you get it spot on right, it's great, because it means effectively everyone that wanted one got one, and if anyone was to ever sell one second hand, it would be at the price they paid for it, or potentially more, which is great for people who've got massive collections. It means that the value of their collection holds to what it is. But at the same time, you would never want to cut the market too short, because there are people who want to come into the hobby, and effectively there's nothing out there for them to actually acquire, then they'll never actually get started.
Traditionally, what models tend to be the most popular for Corgi?
I think the first off, a new casting always seems to be the most popular. I think often because people want to see it for the first time, but also they want the first one out of the collection, i.e. the first one ever off the tooling. If you look at it more by perhaps range in aviation, it's very much based on the history of the aircraft, but also sort of the collector's association with it. People collect in many different ways. People collect sometimes by scale, by era, or sometimes by squadron. With trucks, one of the most popular selling items is Eddie Stobart, but away from Eddie Stobart, quite often it's the smaller haulers that are quite popular with the collectors, and a lot of the time it's to do with actually how popular the hauler or even some of the drivers are within the industry. Vanguards are very much focused on era. Fords have always been a very popular area for us, and it's also always very much about either cars that people once owned or once wanted to own, or a parent owned or something. There's always a personal association to it. With buses, with classic buses, it's very much based on people that perhaps used to go on that bus. But with modern image buses, that changes slightly, and the new bus for London, which we've recently released, has been one of our most popular original runner buses for a long time, and essentially there are actually only 8 of them on the road, and they only run one route, so it chops and changes a hell of a lot between the ranges.
And finally, what's next for Corgi?
Well, the things we're working on now is actually splitting into kind of two halves. We're forever looking to add sort of new castings and liveries to our established ranges, like our Aviation Archive haulers and our Vanguards, original omnibuses, but also looking at potential new collectible ranges to bring in, like we did with the Rail Legends range. One of the very key things for the future of diecast is actually getting whole new people into the hobby, and potentially at younger ages as well. A lot of the people who collect Corgi now would have maybe perhaps played with Corgi as a child, as a toy, but toys today have very, very much changed, and Corgi's a brand that's been going for over 55 years now. One of our big focuses is on thinking about the future of the brand and how we put the brand into children's hands. So we're trying to look at our product ranges as part of, as you go through life. We're introducing our new Corgi Toys range. It's a very pocket money based product line, but its quality is much better than a lot of other sort of toy alternatives on the market. But it also really focuses on the collecting point of it. There are more of these to get, which is trying to put the collector mindset in at a younger age. I hope you enjoy the new catalogue, which is out on Monday the 24th of September.